Welcome everyone to our Snowflake LinkedIn Live. I'm Matt Carter and I'm the head of developer relations and community here at Snowflake. Very excited to have Craig Kirstens and Unmesh Jagtap today to talk about some recent news we've had coming out of Snowflake Summit. Today, we're diving into the databases powering the future of applications, especially in this rapidly evolving AI area, PostgreSQL. Postgres is, again, the developer's number one favorite database, and it's beloved for its flexibility, vibrant open source ecosystem, and crucial native AI capabilities like vector support. It's the go-to for building the next generation of AI agents and apps. But here's the thing. Taking this brilliant AI agent and app ideas from experimentation to production requires more than just vibe coding. That's not enough, especially with all the demands. We have to make sure that you have all those enterprise class things that Snowflake has really been known for: trust, security, scalability. And that's exactly why we're here today. If you were paying attention to Snowflake Summit last week, or you're in San Francisco with us, you may have seen our big announcement that we acquired Crunchy Data in the last couple of weeks here, which is really exciting because they're really the leader in trusted open source Postgres technology. And so with this move, it allows us to deliver Snowflake Postgres. This is a new kind of database designed to power your most demanding AI and transactional systems at enterprise scale, and with an uncompromising confidence and this enterprise capabilities you expect from the Snowflake AI Data Cloud. So I'm thrilled to be joined by these two incredible leaders who've really made this vision a reality. Unmesh, who leads our Snowflake product team focused on applications, and Craig, who's led product at Crunchy Data for over 5 years and brings outstanding expertise in production-ready Postgres. So I'd love just for a minute for you to just kind of each introduce yourselves, Unmesh and Craig, and just talk about who you are and what you're doing with this, because this is a big moment for the company.
Craig, do you want to go first? We've agreed to be nice to each other today.
Sure, I'll go first. So I'm Craig, was the Chief Product Officer at Crunchy Data, now leading up the product and engineering work for Snowflake Postgres. And I've been in the Postgres space for a while. I think we'll probably get into deeper some of that background and history in a little bit. But I've basically been running Postgres at production kind of ready and large scale for developers for almost 15 years now.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm Unmesh. I am the product manager for focusing on applications at Snowflake. It's great to be with all of you today.
All right, well, let's get started here. Craig, we'd love to kick it off with you. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more, more detail about Postgres in terms of, really what's been your journey with Postgres in your career. But I think also super importantly, again, for me personally, is why do you think Postgres is becoming this undisputed choice for so many developers and so many different application types?
Yeah, man. And now I got to go back a little ways. I'll probably start almost 15 years ago. I was an early engineer and product manager at Heroku. And at Heroku, I accidentally stumbled into the Postgres space. I found myself, we ran Postgres and we're using it. And we had all these internal Rails developers and they're just throwing stuff into the database thinking it's a dumb store. I'm like, hang on, what are you doing? You're not taking advantage of timestamps. You're not taking advantage of foreign keys. And they're like, no. Why would we do that? We're not database engineers. I'm like, there's this wonderful tool under the covers. And I was off running product on a different area. And one of the GMs at Heroku was like, hey, you kind of seem to know something about this Postgres thing. You should come and do product and marketing and help us, build this Postgres product. And I'm like, no, that's not interesting. And he managed to convince me to do it. Fast forward 15 years and had this, incredible journey with Postgres. But I think a lot of it was right place, right time. At Heroku, we chose Postgres very intentionally 15 years ago because of its track record of security and reliability. It wasn't the shiniest thing 15 years ago, right? It wasn't known as user-friendly, easy to use. And there was a journey there where we started to invest in the community. I recall actually, Amazon didn't want to support Postgres at first. They were all in on MySQL, and it just had this developer love and groundswell, right? So Postgres came from this strong background of being safe for your data, right? As a database, that's the number one thing you can do is be safe and reliable for your database. And not all databases take that approach. Now, once you start there, Postgres has had this journey over the last 10 years to become more developer friendly, to become, I don't know that databases are cool. I don't know that I'm going to show up at my kids, what do your parents do for workday and be the coolest parent there, running databases. But as much as databases can be cool, Postgres has kind of become that cool kid, right? And it's with things like geospatial and full text search and like range types, right? Like something as simple as range types, like a to and a from, instead of putting that into two different columns within the database. Well, how do you make sure that a class schedule doesn't overlap between, two times, right? You can build that in application logic, but why do it when you've got like integrity within the database, right? You fast forward to things like, indexing. Like it's a really feature-rich database. Like most databases have like, if you have a CS background, most have like one type of indexing and it's B-tree indexing, right? Postgres has gen, gist, SP gist, Brin indexes, and it just keeps evolving and getting new ones, right? And this is academic research now applied to an open source database that we can all use and take advantage of. Not to mention JSON-B, right? I joke that we got JSON in Postgres back in 9.2. That's over 10 years ago now, but we sort of cheated. Like it went into a text field. We validated it was JSON and threw it into a text field. JSON-B, which stands for binary, my colleague Will calls it, stands for better. Like it's a binary representation, but like I much prefer JSON-B being the better one. Like it's a full binary representation of JSON on disk, right? The mixed modal versions, right? Whether it's geospatial, full text, JSON, like Postgres is less of a stodgy relational database and now increasingly a data platform, right? Which when I look at Snowflake and the Snowflake journey, it aligns beautifully, right? One side from the operational, one side from the analytical.
Yeah, that's and again, it's funny because you're talking about, whether data is cool or not, but all I know is like once we announced this at Snowflake Summit, I was honestly blown away with the absolute enthusiasm and passion people had about this announcement. I knew it was a big deal, but I didn't realize how much it mattered to developers. And so there's definitely something that's super resonant here and becoming incredibly popular that was, really exciting to see, especially, the enthusiasm from the attendees. Umesh, I'd love for you to kind of build on this and like talk about like how do these conversations between Snowflake and Crunchy Data come about?
So, it all starts with the customer problem, which is many of the application builders who are building on Snowflake love Snowflake, right? They want to treat us as a single source of truth. And one of the key missing building blocks, which really our customers have been asking for, so that Snowflake could be the data and the AI platform, is basically a Postgres compatible database. So we've been looking at, how do we build this ourselves? Do we partner with someone, or do we just go and acquire a player that is super awesome, very well known in the community, known for production-ready, enterprise-ready database, versus just being playing in the lower spectrum of the market, where you can do vibe coding and experimentation. So there are a couple of reasons why Crunchy Data really stood out for us. The most important one was the fact that it was battle tested. The fact that people have been using enterprises, big and small, have been using Crunchy Data in production for some of their most mission critical use cases. Some of the customers that we talked about, they are really using Crunchy Data at scale. So that aspect of production ready, enterprise ready for our Snowflake customers was very important to us. And that's how, these conversations started. At that time, Craig and I connected with a few folks on both sides, and we really made it happen. But what we have right now is a fully Postgres compatible database that any of our customers or app developers building on top of Snowflake can use within the security perimeter of Snowflake. There's no compromises as it relates to the security guarantees. That your data doesn't leave Snowflake. It's all within the security perimeter of Snowflake. So super excited about what's next to come with Snowflake Postgres and working with Craig.
Yeah, I think that mix of this productivity and just like again passion for the tool combined with that that security manageability posture, like it's really having your cake and eating it too, which I think is super exciting. Umesh was mentioning some of the use cases here that are they're getting lit up. Craig, I'd love to get a little bit of your perspective from your history at Crunchy Data. Like, what are some of the key use cases that you've seen that really shine that Postgres opens up that are stand out to you as in looking at all the the customers you work with?
So it's funny. I love and hate this question because like I get it all the time. Sometimes we would get it from, this investor or this strategic partner or this one, so like, hey, like what's the markets and what's the verticals? And it's like, who uses data? Everyone. Like who has a need for an operational transactional system, right? And it's like, oh, well, is it banking? Sure. Is it e-commerce? Is it retail? Is it literally everywhere you have data, right? Which is it's no secret to anyone here that like data is everywhere and powers the world, right? And so I look at, Postgres itself as the core engine. And like it moves at a stable pace, right? Postgres, the core open source community Postgres releases once a year and it moves forward at a stable pace. It gets performance improvements, new features, but it doesn't always latch onto the shiniest new feature, right? Now, that's where the extensions world of Postgres comes in and where you really get fascinating opportunities, right? At Crunchy, we created many extensions, things like PG Parquet, so you can write stuff from Postgres to Parquet natively, right? Or PG Incremental for incremental data processing. One of my colleagues back when we were at Microsoft wrote PG cron. That's cron inside your Postgres database, right? Like if you can think it, you can make a Postgres extension for it. And so, and that's where I think you see this expansive kind of set of workloads, right? Things like geospatial, things like in the AI space, right? PG vector turns Postgres into a full vector database, right? Like now you don't need a special purpose database. We've expanded Postgres to do that. And I think the reliability is one piece, right? The extensibility is another. And this developer love and kind of reach within developer ecosystems, right? And I'm often asked like, oh, how did Postgres get that? How do you recreate that? I wish I knew, right? Like it's a magical thing that happened. And I've been on this journey. I recall, I want to say it was maybe 10 years ago at a DjangoCon conference, like Django, the popular Python web framework. And it was a 2-track conference. And I was on kind of the curation list of the talks. And it was like, okay, well, if we have a talk about this front end framework, we need to have a talk equally about this front end framework. And if we have we need to be fair, right? And there was a talk that was at lunch that was there was no 2 tracks. It was a single track and it was about Postgres. And on the organizers list, it's like, well, if we're going to have a talk about Postgres, should we have a talk about some other database to be fair? And it was unanimous of no. As a developer, you're using Postgres. And if you're not using Postgres, you should come and learn why. And that developer sentiment has just only increased over the last 10 years, that it is the choice of database for developers. If you need operational, transactional, high throughput scale, low latency, right? Systems of operations versus systems of engagement, like Postgres is your answer for those systems of operation.
Yeah, that's and just that foundational element. I think you summed up really well, that every company has data, and every company needs to get the maximum value out of their data and drive innovation there. And so I'm very proud of myself. I had one question that you loved and hate. I'm going to try my next one for both of you that hopefully you'll love and hate. Everybody's talking about AI agents. We're really in this era of AI agents, and so one thing I'd love to how do you think that Snowflake Postgres is positioned to support companies as they move into this, production grade, but also innovative move towards AI agents in their organizations?
I'm happy to go first, Craig, and you can add to it. Look, AI agents are, as cool as the name sounds, they are really, applications. With AI as the foundation, as any application needs memory or state to store the content of what it is doing, the context. Postgres is the answer. It's a developer's choice. So we don't make. Yes, Snowflake is AI first. AI is a very important aspect of our strategy. But the fact is that Postgres is the foundation, the developer foundation that we are really banking on. And what Crunchy brings to the table, again, I'll sound like a broken record here, is that it brings that production readiness, because enterprises building AI agents are very different from developers doing vibe coding and building like agents or using agentic platforms to build their applications. So what is really important to us is that there are 2 trends here. One is the battle-tested production readiness of Crunchy data that will now become Snowflake Postgres, and the other is the fact that Postgres remains the developer choice. Correct?
Yeah, Umesh, you accidentally teed me up perfectly. Where it's like I think your broken record about production ready enterprise grade, right? Like yes, we've talked about the developer love piece, and extensions are cool, and things like PG vector, and I've used the term production grade so much in the last year. But I think it's important to break out, what does it mean, right? Like, great, you can get a database in a minute for vibe coding, and that's wonderful. But like, what happens when that application gets large, right? How do you scale it up? How do you make sure you have DR? How do you have like things like major version upgrades on Postgres, right? Like, it's great to get a quick database, but all of those day two operations, right? Like, major version upgrades is a thing that if it's a solved problem for you, amazing. If it's not a solved problem, you've got several months of engineering ahead of you, right? Things like connection scaling within Postgres, defined maintenance windows, patching of your extensions, all of these things, right? That really, as a developer, you don't want to think about your database. You want to build apps. You want to deliver customer value. Like, if you're thinking about your database from a operational standpoint, right? Like, this is a thing that you want to put the data in and you want to get the data out and you want it to be there and be safe and reliable. If you're thinking about it, it's not a system of engagement. It's a different mode of thinking, right? It's not what can I mine. I put my operational stuff over to my analytical database to do all of that, right? My operational database, the best one, fades into the background and I get to build my app, right? And so what does production ready mean, right? Like, solid backup story, disaster recovery, easy scaling, in-place upgrades, connection scaling, monitoring. But for the most part, like, a good day with my operational database is when I don't think about it or hear about it, and I just build my app and I deliver value to my customers by building my apps.
Yeah, and Craig, I love how you're saying that, because I think the way you're describing this thing really fits into the promise of the crunchy data acquisition, which you heard a lot in the keynotes at Snowflake Summit about launching Snowflake Postgres, which is going to be this managed Postgres distribution for customers, so they can actually use the product in a way that they're accustomed to from other Snowflake data offerings. I would love to hear from you both. And Craig, you started down this path a little bit. Like, we know the stuff that a modern developer shouldn't have to worry about. But I'd love to think, like, how do you see like the developer experience evolving in a world of Snowflake Postgres?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think if you look at it, the same thing that I think Snowflake saw, Crunchy saw from the opposite side, right? Like, we saw all of these developers within a transactional database saying, I've got to get this over to my analytical system to be able to analyze, mine, and deliver value, right? And so we saw it from that side. You saw all of these analytics users, right, saying, hey, I got to build apps and I need, high throughput transactions. And how do we merge these two, right? And, I can't speak to specifics on the roadmap yet, but I think the convergence, right, of that operational and analytical world is the vision we want to deliver on. And it's a thing in the database world. There was HTAP for a little while. There was, CEP, complex event processing in the database space. I've been in this world for almost 20 years now and seen, phase and phase and phase, and we've tried. I actually think we're at a magical inflection point where we can actually unify those worlds of, a joint picture of operational analytical and deliver immense value, right? Without the headaches of ETL pipelines and CDC and duct tape and glue that is normally kind of these pipelines. More to come on our roadmap around that, but I think unifying those two worlds is really where this gets exciting.
That's fantastic. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, because again, the modern developer experience is something near and dear to my heart, and I think that just getting to a world where like all these options are opened up in a way which lets you innovate and be confident is exciting.
The only thing that I would add to what Craig said is the fact that this is 100% Postgres. No, there's nothing different. There's no, the cool architectures that are evolving with Postgres each have their trade-offs and compromises. What we really liked about Crunchy Data is the fact that this is just 100%, Postgres, Postgres that developers love, Postgres that developers have chosen, the entire ecosystem around ORMs, support for different languages runtimes. It's just a phenomenal thing for developers. And the fact that we can just pass it on to developers as is super important for us.
Yeah, I think I would just add on there, right? And kind of double click on that is like, what's it mean to be Postgres compatible versus Postgres, right? And that's the thing, being so deep in this ecosystem, it makes a lot of sense to me. Like, Postgres is a very open permissive license. And what most people do is go and fork Postgres. Now, what that means is that's fine on day one and for expedience. what that means is in 12 months, when a new version of Postgres comes out, as a engineering team, you've got to rebase and get back to the current. And that makes you lag behind at first by 3 months, then by 6, and then in 4 and 5 years, in 18 months, and you're behind all of these amazing features and extensions. And so when someone says Postgres compatibility, the only thing that's Postgres compatible is Postgres. And so, other things are just different shades of gray, right? We maybe have light gray and dark gray, but like what's compatible, what's not. And for us being pure Postgres, community Postgres, and then building on the extension framework, which I think is unique from so many others, right? They go and fork Postgres. We're not making a bet for, 2 months or 3 months. We're making a bet for decades that like we will maintain, with Postgres, contribute back to Postgres, build on the extension framework. So you have you're not locked in 5 years down the road and regret your decision. You have a long-term path of like everything you love about Postgres, you still get to love it in 10 years because we are pure Postgres.
No, I love that. And then in thinking about this, both in terms of, it is 100% pure Postgres and it's involved in the community project and building on top of that and being, connected to that and also connected to developer delight and productivity and maintain the flow. I think the third leg of the stool here is really like, Snowflake, I think is, what's exciting about, when even I first started looking at what Crunchy Data offers, like that kind of shared DNA about enterprise readiness here. And so Craig, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about like, when you thought about, when you're building Crunchy Data, when you started talking to Snowflake, like what are the things that you think were key to understanding this enterprise scale? And as you think about Snowflake Postgres, what do you think are going to be some of the key characteristics to ensure that it's enterprise ready?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it starts at a product philosophy perspective, right? Like what is a GA production ready database, right? Things like, I talked about this earlier, like in-place upgrades for Postgres major versions. If you don't have that, it's a dump and restore, and it's a size of data operation. Like you can't tell me for a production ready database that, taking a terabyte, if you got a terabyte, you're down for anywhere from 3 to 5 hours to dump and restore. And that in the post, like you can't tell me that's production ready, right? And when we initially shipped Crunchy Bridge, we made sure we had things like, HA, disaster recovery, in-place upgrades, all those out of the box, right? Built-in connection pooling, comprehensive logging support, easy to use like CLI, API, Terraform, go down the list, right? Of everything that is an enterprise you would expect, right? We actually started on the enterprise ready side and then said, now let's figure out how to make this easier to work with for developers, which I think is actually an easier path than starting on the developer hobby side and saying, now we've got to go and check enterprise boxes, right? And so we've been able to sell to very, very large enterprises that are, just starting on an open source journey, right? Like me being in the Postgres world, like open source is everywhere. For some enterprises, it's still a new journey, right? And so been able to go and kind of guide them on that journey. But we've got a number of customers, right? Whether it's, household consumer brands or large enterprises that trust us, and we've been delivering kind of Postgres to them for multiple years in that kind of environment.
And you mentioned customers, like right now, like what's like one of your favorite customers or somebody you think has really been doing cool stuff with Crunchy right now that you think is a kind of a good reference for folks to think about?
So my personal favorite ones are often the customer that this app, you use this app, and it's like, oh, this is on my phone, right? There's a lot of big enterprises and that sort of thing, but I sometimes have like just a personal affection to like this app on my phone. One of them actually, I think, it's both Crunchy and Snowflake, and has been a happy customer. And I think when I talk to them about this, they're like, man, I love this. Like my two favorite like vendors and data providers just got married, and they're like ecstatic about this. Is YNAB. You need a budget. And so they're like a popular budgeting, app. They've got a whole budgeting philosophy. I had a family friend that was saying like, hey, we're thinking about like improving our budgeting. Do you know anyone? And I pointed them at YNAB, and they're like, oh, like we run their operational database, right? They looked at all sorts of other vendors, right? And evaluated in terms of price to performance, what, they were outgrowing their existing provider. They needed someone that they could bet on for years to come. They emphasized that, hey, we wanted pure Postgres, not something, again, Postgres compatible. They knew they didn't want that. And they knew those pitfalls, right? They needed someone they could scale with. But they're a personal budgeting app, right? They're not going to say, I'm going to hire some one-off consultant to throw my database under a rack and maintain. Like they needed, security, compliance, governance, right? Like, hey, if my personal budget app, is sending all this personal finance data, I need to be able to trust the vendor, right? And so YNAB is one that I love, and man, it's amazing. Like when they migrated as a customer, I think we had several people on the team like, oh, I've been using them for years. That's so exciting. And so I love when our team's excited about the people we onboard because they're already using the app, and it's just kind of a wonderful ecosystem.
Yeah, and like something like YNAB, I think, especially with using Crunchy data and Snowflake Postgres, like that they don't have to worry about success because cool, the vibes got them to getting their ID into software, but they're not going to have these these problems they run into later because things don't scale or they're not secure or whatnot. And so like the best of both worlds with those kind of customers are super exciting. And I think with this Umesh, like for developers, kind of beyond even just like the Postgres thing, like what do you think Snowflake Postgres means for developers who are building AI apps on top of the Snowflake AI Data Cloud? I mean, it's a broad platform now, and it's like, how are you thinking about this fitting into the broader vision here?
I mean, the broader vision is that Snowflake is the data and the AI platform for app development, as you rightly called out. Snowflake Postgres is a very important building block for app developers. It's the power of the platform is really the ecosystem of capabilities that the platform brings together. So if you're an app developer and you want to do more with your data, now you can use Cortex AI. You could build amazing applications. You could deploy them directly in the Snowflake perimeter. You could build, distribute, and sell these applications through Snowflake Marketplace. So there are a bunch of extensibility capabilities that Snowflake provides: Snowpark Container Services, native apps, Snowpark, all of the business logic that you can bring in Snowflake now just got much more powerful with Snowflake Postgres being in the mix, because now you have a truly transactional database that developers love in the AI Data Cloud. But it's not just that. As I would reiterate, that it's the entire set of capabilities that Snowflake AI Data Cloud offers to the developers, starting with AI to marketplace to building and deploying applications and distributing, selling them through the Snowflake Marketplace.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, this is a super. I'm just really thrilled about this because just seeing this platform grow and just like the developer experience improve is amazing. We do have questions coming in from members of the audience here, so I want to just put some of these out here and get your thoughts on it. And the first one, which is kind of the big one, is like, what does the timeline look like for customers to get access to Snowflake Postgres?
I can take a stab at this. I mean, it's week 2 for Crunchy team in Snowflake. Craig and I are figuring out what the timeline looks like, but we would say that GA is probably early next year.
Great. Next question from Monitor. What about SQL Server? I'm not sure if SQL Server support or whatnot. I'm just reading the question here. So
yeah, probably more context will be helpful. But Craig, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think SQL Server is a great database, right? And there's a number of great databases out there. So like our initial bet is Postgres, right? Like there's a lot of developer love with Postgres, and I think other databases, that is absolutely kind of an option in the future, but we kind of got to evaluate based on demand and what we need. And we've seen people migrate from SQL Server to Postgres. We've seen people migrate from MySQL and Oracle to Postgres. And so Postgres is a very feature-rich database that has a lot of things going for it. I think, as Umesh said, like kind of need more context there, right? Is it you want to migrate, or there's a particular feature, or is there a timeline for us to support? And I think, by all means, reach out to us and we can follow up on kind of more detail on, what does that look like?
Awesome. All right. The next question. How will the acquisition impact Snowflake's developer ecosystem, and what new tools and capabilities will be available to developers using Snowflake Postgres?
I mean, I think my take on this is Snowflake has been known in the developer community, in the developer ecosystem, but having a really like a full Postgres compatible transactional database really solidifies our position in the developer ecosystem. And we take that as a privilege, So the fact that developers can now trust us, they can bring their applications and build their applications on top of Snowflake with all of the things that I just talked about. Cortex AI, access to marketplace, the fact that you can monetize these applications, and the entire integration around Snowflake AI Data Cloud is what developers should be really excited about. Craig,
Yeah,
anything
and I
to
would
add?
say, Crunchy has a deep DNA in the Postgres open source community. We contribute a lot to upstream Postgres. Several people on my team and colleagues are, contributors to Postgres, committers. We're actively involved in that process. And, I'm excited kind of actually, seeing Snowflake's journey, right, with Iceberg and other pieces, right, of deeper commitment and engagement across many open source communities, right? And, no open source community is the same, but there's a lot of kind of opportunity for us to go and invest further in Postgres and accelerate Postgres as a community project, right? So there's a lot of opportunity for even deeper investment there, which, developers benefit, right? Like, as we've seen, when we engage and contribute to open source in great ways as a good steward, like, everyone wins. And so I think we've got a lot of opportunity around that.
Yeah, and I think with the lessons from Iceberg and that experience, I think we're in a really amazing time. So we're running at the end of the hour here. Let me throw one more question out here from LinkedIn. Is there going to be an early preview available to see how this will be integrated natively in Snowflake?
We are actively working on it. More to share in coming times, but yeah, nothing concrete as of now. But please be rest assured that we would love to get this in the hands of customers and developers. So this is something that is a very important priority. We just don't have very concrete timelines just yet.
Yeah, it's like this. Stay tuned. And again, I think at the end, they're going to put a link to the blog post to kind of get a summary of this. And this is a good place to learn more about this, and also to, to keep in touch with us in terms of when we go into different previews, different announcements. There's going to be a lot of things coming between now and Build and beyond. So stay tuned. So with that, thank you all for attending and spending the time with us here. Craig and Umesh, thank you so much for sharing your expertise in this. And I'm excited to see how this Postgres adventure goes in the next chapter. So thank you all, and look forward to seeing you on an upcoming LinkedIn Live.
Thanks.